So if we want to walk in 4D, let's get established in what is going on here. What is our true identity? Are we in Christ? Do we have the blessing? We're going to track the blessing here briefly with some highlights, but let's make sure that our true identity is in Christ. One must be born again, John 3:7, to be in Christ. John 1st chapter, 12th verse. To as many as received him, to them he gave the power to become children of God. We need God's seed in us, right? And so the blessing of Abraham came through Jesus. We're going to look at that here briefly so that we can walk in this blessing. Let's just go through some points here. Well, the important thing we need to look at is what was going on here in the garden before anything tragic happened. Well, Adam was blessed. We see that here in Genesis. What happened after that? We know the fall came and the curse came. However, God's blessings and purposes for man continue. Thankfully, we've got a good God. Well, you've got a couple paths here that you can take. Path one, you can stay on the cursed path, right? All after Adam, those who don't trust or take refuge in the Lord, they're going to work by the sweat of their brow and toil and sorrow. And then they're going to end up in the lake of fire. No redemption, no salvation, no second Adam, no seed of the woman. That's Jesus. So that's the bad news over here on the left. That's path one. Path two is much better. Path two has the blessing. We're going to track the blessing. The blessing goes through all the way up until Jesus. Jesus gives us the blessing. But before we get there, what was going on? Well, you've got Seth after Adam, and you've got actually more to it than this, but we're just going to cover some highlights here. Seth, Noah, Abraham, Moses, who isn't in the lineage of Jesus directly, but played a significant role. What else we have here? Well, the blessing of the Lord makes one rich. That's kind of important. He adds no sorrow with it. Over here on the left, we've got sorrow, though. That's not good. Right? A lot of people are working, they're toiling, but it comes with sorrow. With the blessing of the Lord, there is no sorrow, and he makes one rich. Well, we saw a lot of that in the Old Testament. We won't cover all of it here, but we know that there was a lot of wealth going on in the Old Testament. What happens over here as we continue down the blessing line? Oh, we're back in Eden. So you've got a lot going on here before we get back to Eden, but if you're born again, this is where you are. Oh, what do we have here? Deuteronomy 28. There are things going on there in Deuteronomy 28. We're back to Eden because of Jesus. Look, if you're born again, you are here. What is here? Well, Jesus, he's the second Adam. Galatians 3. Verses 13 and 14 give us a glimpse here. Christ redeemed us from the curse of the law by becoming a curse for us. Much more going on here than we'll get into, but basically, for it's written in the old, cursed is everyone who is hung on a tree. Well, Jesus hung on a tree, and he redeemed us in order that the blessing promised to Abraham would come to the Gentiles in Christ Jesus, so that by faith, we might receive the promise of the Spirit. We know that Jesus is the seed of the woman. We know that all who receive Jesus receive God's seed. We receive God's Spirit, right? So that's pretty important. Well, as we just take a quick look here at what we've covered, on the left, we've got the cursed. You don't want to be in the cursed, ends up in the lake of fire. On the right side here, we've got the blessing, much better over here on the right side. So let's plan to look at that more closely in ensuing communications. In the meantime, just understand that if you're born again, you're here, you're redeemed from the curse. We've gone back to Eden. Jesus was walking on water, calling Peter out to walk on water with him. He's casting out demons. He's healing people. He's telling us that we're going to do the things he does and even greater things. Well, that gives us some indication here that before the curse and before the fall, in the beginning, God set us up in such a way where we would walk in a way that we're probably not used to walking in, even if we are in Christ. So let's begin to focus more on the fact that we are in Christ, if we are in Christ. If we're not in Christ, we need to get in Christ. One must be born again. Again, John 3:7. In the meantime, if we're walking by faith in Christ, let's look at the words of Jesus and be reminded as we continue along in the blessing that we are blessed, that we probably aren't apprehending everything that God has for us, but he wants us to walk in the blessings. So that's just the start. Those are the highlights. Let's live in 4D. If we're not living in 4D, let's make an effort to begin living in 4D. It involves the blessing. It involves our true identity. Be blessed today as you consider the blessing and all that God has done for you.